So you want to get shredded. You're a lad in your 20s or 30s and you want to have the six-pack abs, the vascularity, the sharp jawline, and fundamentally, you're sick and tired of being embarrassed to take your t-shirt off around other people. Right now, you're carrying a little bit too much body fat for your liking and you've been trying to lose the weight for what seems like an eternity, but you've not had much luck. You're training hard, you're eating clean, you seem to be doing all the right things, yet when you look in the mirror, there's not much progress. Well, I get your frustration because not too long ago, I was in a very similar position myself, carrying too much body fat and very unhappy with the way that my physique was looking. So let's rewind a few months. I'd just come back from traveling New York, Copenhagen, and going skiing in the French Alps. In between all of that, we had Christmas and it was my birthday, and it's safe to say my physique took the hit. But fast forward 3 months and this is me now. 15 kilos of body fat down, six-pack abs on show, looking a lot more like myself, and let me tell you, feeling a hell of a lot better. In case this is your first time stumbling across one of my videos, my name is Harry and I've been a fitness coach for years. I have transformed hundreds of physiques in that time frame, and I help guys just like you get in the shape of their life. So gents, in this video, I'm going to walk you through the exact 3 pillars that you need to have dialed down and the exact step-by-step process that you need to take to lose more body fat in a matter of months than what most men do in years. So let's crack on. Pillar number 1 is nutrition. You can lift weights 7 times a week, run a marathon every weekend, but if your nutrition isn't structured correctly, then you're not going to get very far. Now here's the thing, fat loss needs to be both sustainable and unsustainable in order to actually work. You see, fat loss isn't something that you're supposed to do indefinitely, and by dragging the process out, you just increase the likelihood that you're going to fall off track, or you end up giving up too soon because you're not seeing results quick enough. But on the other hand, if you try and rush through the process, slash your calories down, do hours of cardio and try and lose as much weight as possible in the shortest amount of time, yeah, you're probably not going to be able to stick to that either. So it needs to be a nice blend of the two. And here's how you do it. It all starts with your calories, and you want to get yourself in a fairly aggressive deficit, around a 750 to 1000 calorie deficit per day. This is going to help you lose around 0.7 to 1 kilogram per week, which if you imagine over the course of a few months is going to have you dropping at least 10, 11, 12 kilograms. But as a byproduct of aiming for a more aggressive deficit, you're going to naturally increase the risk that you lose a little bit of muscle mass. So we want to try and counteract this as much as possible. And that's where your macros come in. Now, I like to follow a high protein, moderate carb, and low fat approach. So when it comes to your protein intake, try and consume around 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight. 20% of your calorie intake should come from fats, and the rest can come from carbs. Now, lads, I understand all this talk about calories and macros can be pretty confusing, and you might not actually know where to start, or you're scared that you're going to do it wrong, which is the exact reason why I've created a completely free 6-week fat loss program to help get you started. You're going to receive tailored calorie and macro targets, but you'll get a choice of 3 different training programs to fit your schedule, alongside 12 detailed videos highlighting exactly what you need to do at every single step of the process. So if you want to make sure that you get off to a strong start, all you got to do is head to the link in the description. But here's the thing that no one is telling you. You want to use the 80-20 principle to help structure your diet correctly. What this means is that 80% of the foods you eat should come from clean, whole food sources. So for your protein, it'll be things like lean meats and seafood. For your carbohydrate sources, it'll be things like pasta, rice, and potatoes. And for your fat sources, it'll be things like avocado and Greek yogurt. This type of food is nutrient dense and is going to fuel you and push you towards your fat loss goal. However, you need to understand that you're a human being and not some sort of fat loss robot. So 20% of your diet should ideally come from the fun stuff. Have a little bit of processed food in there. A tiny bit of chocolate or the odd cookie isn't going to kill you. And if anything, it's actually going to help you stay more consistent and prevent you from falling off track. What I'm about to say next might shock you, but when it comes to supplements, I personally don't think they're necessary. Don't get me wrong, if you're genuinely deficient in something, for example, I live in the UK, we don't get a great deal of sunlight, I'm probably deficient in vitamin D, supplementing with a vitamin D supplement is a pretty smart idea. But take it from me, someone that has worked with the world's largest supplement brands in the past, a lot of the supplements that are being pushed onto you are a waste of money. That being said, there are only 2 supplements that I personally think are worth it, and the first is bog standard whey protein. You don't want to become dependent on it, and you definitely don't want to be using it every single day, but it can be really convenient to have in the cupboard. And the second is creatine monohydrate. In a nutshell, creatine is going to help you get that little bit more out of your training sessions, whether it's lifting a slightly heavier weight or maybe squeezing out a few more reps. It's nothing magical, but you can't argue with the science and research that's gone into it. Aside from those 2, I'd save your money and invest it elsewhere. Next up, I just want to share a few useful tips and tricks that I've learned over the years that make staying in that calorie deficit a little bit easier. Number 1 is pushing your first meal back until a little bit later on in the day. I personally won't eat my first meal until around midday. The reason this is so effective is because us guys typically get hungrier as the day goes on. So by pushing your first meal back, you give yourself more calories for later on in the day, which, as we've just mentioned, is the portion of the day where you are at your hungriest. Number 2 is to utilize caffeine effectively. Caffeine is not only great as a little energy boost, but it also works as a natural appetite suppressant. So 1 to 200 milligrams of caffeine before your workout is not only going to boost your performance in the gym, but it's also going to suppress your appetite throughout the rest of the day. Number 3 is to chuck 0-calorie soda drinks into your diet. These are pretty effective because not only are they sweet, which can help curb any sweet tooth cravings you're getting, but they're also carbonated, which is going to trick your mind into thinking that you're fuller than you actually are. And number 4 is to incorporate volume eating as frequently as you possibly can. Volume eating is basically where you pack out your meals with low-calorie foods like fruit and vegetables to keep you fuller without denting your calorie target. Pillar number 2 is training. Now, there is a very specific structure that you're going to want to follow when it comes to the type of training that you do in order to get the best results possible. Now, I'll be real with you, I'm not here to bullshit. You'll get a lot of people on social media these days telling you what you want to hear instead of what you need to hear. They'll come up with ridiculous claims like,
you can train once per week and get in great shape.
Spoiler alert, you can't. You want to be resistance training 3 to 5 times a week. If you are someone that's a little bit busier and you have a little bit more on your plate, then 3 days a week with the correct structure is perfect. However, if you have the luxury of time on your side, then 4 or 5 days per week gives you a little bit more flexibility. Regardless as to whether you're training 3, 4, or 5 days per week, you want to make sure you're targeting each muscle group twice per week. If you're someone that can only train 3 days per week, something like a full body upper lower split is pretty spot on. If you're someone that can train 4 days per week, something like an upper lower split would work quite nicely. And if you're someone that can train 5 days per week, then something like a push pull legs upper lower split is pretty ideal. So now you've got your training split, what exercises should you be doing? Well, you want to try and build your workouts around compound exercises. These are exercises that target 2 or more muscle groups at the same time, and they're going to be a lot more efficient. These are exercises like your squat, your bench press, and your pull-ups. Then you want to follow them on with isolation exercises. These are exercises that target one specific muscle group at a time. Things like your bicep curl or your lateral raises. I'd pick 3 to 5 of these and once again perform them after your compound exercises. Now, the reason you want to be training each muscle group twice per week is to provide a sufficient stimulus. Your muscles aren't just going to grow on their own. You've got to force them to grow. And I know it's not what you want to hear, and whilst training each body part once per week is a good place to start, training each muscle group twice per week just gives you that edge. But alongside hitting each muscle group twice in a 7-day period, you want to ensure that you're taking each of them through at least 10 to 15 sets per week. For an intermediate lifter, this is more than enough to see sufficient muscle growth, providing you're training at the right intensity. Now, for your training intensity, I'm going to make things super simple and split it into 2 camps. You have beginners and then you have intermediate/advanced lifters. Which camp you're in dictates how intense your training should be. If you're a beginner, you want to worry less about training intensity to begin with and just focus on nailing your technique. You don't really want to train within a close proximity of failure since you're new to the movements and your risk of injury is a lot higher. But if you're an intermediate/advanced lifter, you want to be training at a higher intensity. And honestly, I know it might sound a little bit blunt, but if you're not training within at least 1 to 2 reps of failure, then you're probably wasting time. Now, for any beginners watching this, once you've got your technique nailed, you can gradually increase your training intensity until you too are training within that closer proximity of failure. Now, I'm about to drop another bombshell on you, but when it comes to cardio, again, I don't think it's entirely necessary. Don't get me wrong, it can make life a million times easier, especially if you're someone who has a little bit more body fat to lose. But there is only one type of cardio that's really going to benefit you from a physique standpoint, and that is LISS cardio, or low intensity steady state cardio. The reason this is so good is because it doesn't cause any excess fatigue. It's not going to impact your recovery, and it's definitely not going to impact your training sessions. If you are going to chuck a little bit of LISS cardio in, I recommend doing 20 to 30 minute sessions at a time and start with just 1 or 2 sessions per week and gradually build it up. Pillar number 3 is lifestyle. Without a doubt, the most overlooked aspect when it comes to getting in shape. Everybody is so concerned with what they're doing in the gym and the foods that they're eating that they often neglect their lifestyle. So there are a few pieces that you want to make sure you have in place. The first is your recovery. You want to be making sure you're getting 7 to 9 hours of good quality sleep every single night and building in a sufficient evening routine to make that possible. The gym is where you break down muscle tissue, but your sleep is where you repair and rebuild it. Poor sleep, poor results, so make it a priority. The second is hydration. Most guys are walking around dehydrated and they don't even realize. As a minimum, you want to be drinking around 2.5 to 3 liters of water per day. However, on the days you train, you're going to be losing a lot more fluid through sweat. So it's a really smart idea to aim for around 3.5 to 4 liters of water on those days. Number 3 is steps. If you really want to lose body fat and get lean, but you're doing any less than 8 to 10,000 steps per day, then that's a good place to start. And I get that maybe some of you lads are watching this thinking, fucking hell, 10,000 steps per per day. That's going to take forever. What I do to make things a little bit easier and fit into my schedule a little bit better is split them up. I'll do a 30-minute walk in the morning and a 30-minute walk in the evening. Those two walks combined are going to bank me around 7,000 steps on top of my normal day-to-day movement anyway. And all of that usually totals up to around 10 to 12,000 steps per day. And number 4 is your mind. What a lot of lads fail to understand is that embarking on a fitness journey isn't just physically demanding, but it's mentally demanding as well. Make sure you're taking at least 30-40 minutes every single day to unwind and do something that you genuinely enjoy. Otherwise, you're just going to be miserable and end up burning out. So there we have it, chaps. 3 pillars and a step-by-step breakdown on how you're going to drop an insane amount of body fat over the next 3 months. Don't forget, if you want to make losing that body fat a million times easier and remove all of the guesswork, you can head to the link in the description and get started for free. And as always, if you've enjoyed the video, give it a like. If you're new here, make sure you hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.